Hi, I'm Shaun from My Mental Health. And for Mental Health Awareness Month, we are celebrating by interviewing recovery advocates. Choose to recover out loud. We will get into some sober tips and discuss their experience, strength, and hope from our guests this month. Today we have DJ Sober Shorts, and it's David Rushing, and he's going to share just some tips on his recovery experience and also just like his experience in general. And you can follow him again at DJ Sober Shorts. Try not to laugh when I say it, but I love the name. He recovers out loud. He is a great recovery advocate. And I've been following from the beginning, and I love watching his journey in sobriety. So, David, if you'd like to introduce yourself again, or if you want to get right into sharing your experience, how you got sober, and maybe some like tips from the beginning or, throughout your experience.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. First of all, I appreciate it. I appreciate you following from the beginning. We met a while ago.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been quite the ride, and I'm happy to be on it. Happy to be here sharing with you. I appreciate it. Just to be clear, I'm not a DJ. Also, I think that people think that all the time. So, you want me to just dive right in?
Dive in. Let's go.
Okay. Cool. Well, I was born into addiction. Both my biological parents were addicts, not just with drinking, it was drugs as well. And I didn't live with them for that long. They gave me up to my family, which should have been a good thing, but immediately I went to live with my biological mom's aunt, who was also an addict. So I lived in a home filled with drugs and abuse, physical abuse, and seeing my aunt be abused as well. Both her and her boyfriend were both drug addicts at the time. I lived with them probably for a year, maybe two, when I was younger. I was really young at the time. I was probably kindergarten or first grade, however old that is. Um, After living with them, I got an awesome opportunity. My great aunt decided to take me into her home, which was complete opposite of what I had known. I went from where I was to a loving home, a mom who cared for me. She did the best she could for me. She had already raised three kids. She was my great aunt, so she's a little bit older. She still decided to take me in after raising three children of her own, and two of her children also struggled with addiction as well. But she gave me a shot, and uh, things were good. Things were really good. I would go visit my sister during the summers, and growing up, everything I think felt fine. But when you're younger, like I couldn't really understand that I had trauma still from the past that I hadn't dealt with, and then more trauma to come as well. We made a family friend who was um, someone who I would visit during the summer. And one summer I went to go stay with their family, and we went on a camping trip. And one of the nights of the camping trip, I woke up in the sleeping bag with the father who was uh, sexually molesting me. And it didn't go like super far. I was old enough to say stop and put a stop to it. And it only happened once. I feel like when I bring this subject up, I almost shy away from it because I feel lucky that it only happened once to me and wasn't something that went on, for years, which I understand so many people go through. And that is such a heavy, heavy thing to go through. So, but that happened and still affected me, right? And at this point, I think I was in middle school, and um, I held on to it for a little bit. I ended up telling my mom about it. This gentleman lived overseas. They moved. I have no idea where this person is or whatever, nor do I care. But it was just added trauma to an already trauma filled past. I swore I was never going to drink or do any sort of drugs ever, right? Like I had seen so much that wasn't going to be me, not going to be me at all, you know? And then the day comes where you try it. And once you try it, you feel the escape from those things that were weighing you down. And once I felt that escape, I didn't want to go back to reality. And so I began my 20 plus year career with drinking. And I had a lot of ups and downs with it. Early on in my drinking career, I would get in trouble for being drunk in public. I was staying in the Bay Area at the time, and the police officers knew me by name. I would get arrested, put in the drunk tank, and let back out. I think feel like it was like 6 times I probably got in trouble there. Um, it reached a point to where um, it just wasn't a good fit for me to be living with my sister at the time. She had 2 children, and I was in party mode. So, understandably, I shouldn't have been around them. So I ended up moving to St. Louis, where my biological dad was, and I hadn't really known him my whole life. I think I met him briefly when I was 16, and at this point, moving to Missouri, I was 20. I had reached out to him and asked him if I could have some help getting money so I could get a place. He offered me a bus ticket out to Missouri, and I came out here, and he said I could get a job and earn money to save up. So at that point, I was kind of stuck here in Missouri. I didn't really have anything to fall back on. Also, at the time, I thought I was moving into a house with my father who was sober, and he was not sober at the time. So those things I was trying to escape, I ended up living in the house with it all over again. Um, it was more of a party with my friend relationship, not so much of a father son relationship. Mind you, through all this time, I had dabbled with other drugs. For whatever reason, none of those drugs ever stuck with me like alcohol did. I could do cocaine and be like, okay, cool. I don't have to do it again. I could various drugs and I'd be like, okay, cool. But alcohol was the one constant that I would do pretty much daily. Um, so I lived with him for a few years until that came to a head. He was getting divorced. He needed to move out. I couldn't be living with him. We had never cleared the air or had discussions about anything from the past. So I feel like there was a lot of tension between us.
Mm.
So I moved on, lived with some friends, was still in party mode. At this time, I'm young. I'm not thinking I'm doing anything wrong. I'm 20 something years out old, going to the bars, having a good time. As it progressed, uh, I ended up, uh, continuing to drink daily, but ended up getting older. I had a child. I ended up getting married, had a second child, and the drinking at that point was daily, but I was able to give myself the excuse of, oh, well, now I have a good job, I have a career, I have kids, I have a home.
Mm.
So I don't really like to use the term functioning alcoholic. I feel like that gives an excuse to um, someone with a drinking problem. And but I think then that was the term I would use for myself is functioning alcoholic. I'm holding down life. All the while I would tell myself I was fine from the past. I was good. I'm over it. That happened a long time ago. No big deal. And sorry, my son's looking at me. We ended up getting married and divorced, all within a year. And when I got separated and divorced, I think things really escalated for me. I felt like I had failed my family, so I started to drink more, and um, that was a really hard part of my drinking. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have a place to take my kids. I was staying in and out of hotels. and would have them come stay at the hotels with me. And the drinking really, really increased then. Uh, Still had a job, so I still had a reason to tell myself I was
Mm,
doing okay. Uh, um, Entered into my next relationship, and things began to get good. We got an apartment. Mind you, through this whole story, like I've never stopped drinking. This is like a daily thing. I think when my oldest son was born, I maybe stopped for 6 months at one point.
okay.
But that I didn't even deem that I was quitting. That was me just like, oh, I had a kid. I'm just stopping. Like
Mm,
I never acknowledged that there was a problem. I just stopped for 6 months. Um, got an apartment, two other kids, ended up getting a home that I live in now. So I just kept doing well in areas of my life, but all I was doing was fueling me to keep having a reason to drink. Um, as I entered in the last year of drinking, I started to realize that um, I I in fact did have a problem. I started to realize like, wow, and I get angry when I drink. I get really emotional, and things that I had never really acknowledged before. Before, when I would be drinking and I would get angry, it was always somebody else's fault. I'd point the finger at them. As I started to focus more on me, I would tell myself, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take a break from drinking. I'm gonna not drink on Monday, or I'm gonna take the weekend off, or dry January,
mm,
whatever it is. I think I completed dry January once in my drinking career. Um, I would say I'm not going to drink Monday. I'd go to work and I would find a reason to get pissed off and be like, oh, it's a bad day. I'm going to go have beers, right? Um, the the final the final stretch was like multiple things that happened where I had gone out and the night had just really went south, or gotten a really big argument with my girlfriend, and I didn't like the way that made me feel, even though I wasn't acknowledging that to her. Inside, I didn't like the way it made me feel, but to her, I had defense mode up and was still trying to blame her for whatever had happened, which completely is not fair, but it's what you do in those moments. Uh, I had embarrassed myself at a wedding. I'd gone to, I took a Kansas City trip, and the whole time to and from driving, I was drinking both ways while driving. And that's about a 3 hour drive. Lucky to have made it to and from. The final night, I went out to, or no, I got in an argument with my girlfriend over something that I was picking the fight. I wanted a reason to call out of work the next day. I called out of work the next day. It was, I think, the beginning of summer, and there were plans to take my kids to Six Flags. And I was like, I'm not going. And she took the kids to Six Flags. I used that as an excuse to get more mad, and I started day drinking really early, and ended up at a bar at night. And the bar didn't want to let me drive home. I ended up They ended up giving me an ultimatum. They said, you can get an Uber or we're going to call the cops. So I opted for an Uber. The driver took me to what I thought was home, but when I got out of the car, I realized it was my old apartment. And I looked at the driver and I was like, "What? This isn't where I live." And he was like, "Well, that's what your ID says. You couldn't give me an address." And it had my old address on it. Funny enough, it still has my old address on it. But um, I asked him if he could take me home, and he was like, "No, dude, you're wasted. Like, I'm leaving you here." And he drove off. When he drove off, I passed out in the grass in the front yard of the apartment complex. And at like 3 in the morning, I woke up to my girlfriend standing over me. And when I looked up and looked in her eyes, is kind of when I realized, like, okay,
mm,
yeah, you're 40 something years old and you just woke up in the front lawn of somebody's apartment. And um, I got home. I ended up sleeping in the car that night. Woke up the next day, and I don't know that I could really explain the feeling of like knowing that something needs to change in that moment. I just knew that that was going to be the day. And I had to go pick up my son from football. And when I picked him up, he could tell something was wrong. He's 15 now. He was 14 at the time. And he looked at me and said, "What's wrong, Dad?" And I said, "I think I need to get help with my drinking." And he put his hand on my back and he was like, "It's going to be okay. This is going to be a good thing." Uh, that moment stands out to me so much for so many different reasons, but that young man is amazing, and his reaction was priceless. I came home. I told my girlfriend that I needed to get help, reached out to the rest of my family and let them know, all of which were so supportive. Um, I'm appreciative so much for the amount of support that they showed me in that moment. I know not everybody gets that support, which makes the decision even harder. Within 4 hours of talking to everybody, I was on a plane and on my way to California to go to a rehab, which is super scary. You don't know really what you're getting into. Um, you leave everything behind. I think another lucky thing for me is I have seen um, my family go to rehab. I've seen their struggles. I've seen them go back and forth. I knew that once I made the decision to go, I it wasn't something I wanted to do over and over again. So I reached out to my dad, my nephew, and my ex-wife's fiance, who all three have been to rehab, and they all, gave me advice. My dad, who is now 20 years sober, told me, basically, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. It's up to you. I entered rehab. I made the decision that I was going to give it my all. When you enter, you're placed on a 5-day detox. At least where I was at,
Mm-hmm.
you, you're not required to join the meetings or participate or anything for the first 5 days. I woke up the first day and walked into the meeting, and the counselor told me, "You don't have to be here. You're in detox." And I said, "I want to be here and I want to start this process now." I really just dove into it head first. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I took pages and pages of notes and absorbed. I threw my story out there. I started sharing immediately. I didn't hold back. I was open and honest. From the jump, I was open and honest. When I left, I had to tell my work. I told them where I was going. I let them know they could tell everybody at work where I was. I didn't want to hide from it. It was important
Mm-hmm.
for me to just have it out there. I had hid from so many things in my past that I was done hiding. I really got so much out of rehab, as hard as it was. It's 30 days away from my kids, my girlfriend, my home. I was so far away. It's not like even if I wanted to leave, it was going to be an easy thing to do. Uh, the last week of rehab got really hard because the rehab facility I was in was closing, but they weren't letting us know they were closing. They tried to tell us that they were upgrading us to sober living, and that just doesn't compute. You don't just uproot somebody that's still in a 30-day program and put them into
Mm-hmm.
sober living. So it kind of rocked my world a bit. I ended up going to this sober living facility for the last, I think, 5 days, but it's different than rehab.
Mm-hmm.
It's people that have more time. It's people that have been living together. They're bonded. It was really hard. I wanted to quit. I wanted to walk out. Um, I was walking to the office to tell them I wanted a plane ticket to leave. And as I did, I got a text message from a friend of mine who had been through who is in recovery
Mm-hmm.
and had been through the rehab process. And it was completely random. Like I hadn't talked to this guy in a while, and he knew where I was. He's just like, "Hey, I just wanted to check in. I know where you're at. I've been there. If you got to talk, just let me know." And literally right before I walked into the office to ask for this plane ticket, it was
Mm-hmm.
so weird. It stopped me in my tracks, and I think that was the first moment in hindsight that showed me what this recovery process can do and how it can bring connection. It was completely
Mm-hmm.
random. and it saved me. I wanted to complete it after I got done talking to him, and I finished. I think I ended up doing 32 days and came back home. And coming back home, you feel confident. You're like, yeah, I got this. I have my notebook. I'm ready to go. Like, this is going to be easy. And then you get to the real world and you're like, oh man, this is not easy. It's a whole different ball game with a whole new set of challenges.
Yes.
You're surrounded by, in my case, alcohol is just everywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, I work in a grocery store, so alcohol's there as well. To start, I went to AA meetings for the first like 3 months. I would go pretty much daily for the first 3 months, but um, AA wasn't really resonating with me. I liked the sharing portion of it, and I liked meeting people, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really get on board with the rules part of it. That I had to complete these steps, and I didn't really like that I had to give myself a label. And I, the first step is admitting that you're powerless over something. That just doesn't feel right coming off of my tongue. Um, I've always told myself I'm more powerful than whatever it is. Um, but I don't knock AA. Like it clearly it works. It's been around how long? You know what I mean? Like if it resonates with somebody and hits with them, then by all means do it. Every once in a while, I think about going back to a meeting just because of the community part of it. Like I love meeting people. I love being in a room full of people that understand and get it. Right? That's something you can't deny is inside one of the rooms. So there's definitely good things for it. I don't knock. However, anybody decides to recover is their thing, and I'm all for it.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe, recovery is very personal. So, works for you, and
totally,
I think yeah.
totally, yeah. I think somewhere around that point, I don't even know where I got where the thought came to me that was like, I'm gonna post something on Instagram. Like I'm gonna. Oh, I actually I'm wrong. I do know. I was on a different app called Quit Drinking. I had downloaded like literally like every app you can think of because I was trying to see what goes on, and then
Yes. Yeah.
um and I was just sharing my journey on this app, and people, it was resonating with people, and I was like, wow, this is cool. Like I'm gonna. So I started a separate Instagram page, the DJ Sober Shorts, and I started sharing, and it was not like this thing where like anything was like going viral or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I would get like random like comments that like, oh wow, thanks for your story, or um that really resonated with me, acknowledgments of like, wow, my words can actually help somebody. And so I just began posting pretty daily, way more consistent back then. Now I'll miss a day here and there, but I still try to post daily. And um, it I've met a lot of awesome people. Um, Case in point, I'm sitting in front of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've I've been on a few podcasts, and it's been a really cool ride. To um, the beginning after rehab, I'm kind of jumping backwards a little bit,
Sure.
but that that beginning stretch, I was just talking about this in counseling yesterday. It was really hard on my relationship. Was one of the hardest things I had to deal with. Um, my girlfriend is such a huge support, but um, she's not in recovery, nor does she have to be in recovery. She can go out and have one
Mhm.
drink and call it a night. I don't understand how anybody can do that. That doesn't register in
Mhm.
my brain. Um, but it was like, she was also like my drinking buddy. Like I'd come home and have beers. Obviously, back then I'm having 8 beers to her one, but um, so I really struggled with if she was going out to dinner and having a drink, and I was taking it
Mhm.
very personal back then, and I would get so angry, and I would try to blame her, like you don't understand what I'm going through, and
Mhm.
um, you know, it's funny because I was sober, but I was still using the same like tactics I would when I was drinking to try to get at somebody, right? Like, you're gonna drive me to drink if you go do X, Y, Z, and trying to just force blame. I had to really dig deep, and I don't know when I did it, but I had to really dig deep to understand that this is my process. It's nobody else's. Nobody else is
Hmm.
going to do this work for me. I have to do it for me first, um, and then the trickle effect is where the benefits come in. So it was a really rocky start when I got back. At one point I didn't know if we were going to make it again. We've both um, gone to couples counseling together, and we have skyrocketed. Our relationship has never been better. It's been such a joy to watch, and adding adding that bit of happiness to adding health and fitness to my journey, it's like all the stars just started to align. And um, at this point in my recovery, it's been the strongest I've felt. It's such a gift and such a reward, and I cherish every moment I have with my kids and all my loved ones. It comes. Lots of people say like your recovery has to come before anything else, which I get why people say that, but for me, it's kind of all of it together. It's not just my recovery. It's like I'm putting my family and my
Hmm.
relationships all in the same class, because I'm working for all of that to better all of that. And the more I get better and heal, the better everything around me gets. And it's just been such a joy. Somewhere in there, by going to counseling too. So my recovery process these days is I go to counseling once a week. I share on Instagram. Anytime I'm given a moment to do something like this, I want to give back to the community and do whatever I can. That's where um, it just kind of fuels me. It makes me feel really
Hmm.
good. I meet people randomly, and I feel like I have this superpower where I can instantly know if they're in recovery, and I'll acknowledge it and just engage in a conversation with them. My connections with people, uh, they're just so much stronger these days because I can see so much clearer. I can hear and
Hmm.
listen so much better. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
been such a reward and such a gift. And 10 for 10 I recommend it. If you're thinking about it, I say go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. I mean, I'm like, I almost cried during you sharing because I was just like that emotional um part about your son. I was in rehab, and then I went to a sober living house actually after, and this is the first time I got sober. This isn't I ended up relapsing after some time, but
Mhm.
my sister wrote me a letter, and I still keep
Mhm.
it because it's just, I don't know, it just hits home every single time, about our relationship and how she wanted, because she cares about me so much, she really wanted me to get it this time. And I carry it around because it's just such a reminder of that connection. Your story is incredible, and I was gonna ask you, like, what exactly do you do, like, on a personal level for your recovery? Like, what does it look like today? But you kind of said
Mhm.
it. Like you said, you're going to counseling, you're recovering out loud, you share your story. That's great. And you do, I mean, since I have been following you, it looks like you lost weight. Like, are you
Yeah.
working out? Like, what are you doing for that, like health wise now?
Yeah. I've lost 45 pounds.
That's
Yeah, it's
great. That's
it's
amazing.
it's been pretty crazy. I in uh in March, not this March, last March, um
Okay.
I started adding working out to it, and then in April it got kind of derailed. My stepdaughter passed away randomly at the age of 19, and so it kind of hit the brakes on things, which was one of, if not the toughest challenges in the recovery process, because that's a easy thing to want to drink through, right?
Mhm.
In that moment, I actually learned a lot about being able to feel my emotions and how to manage those, which is super, super important. Even the hard emotions are important to feel, right? Um, it's easy to absorb the happy moments, but how can you manage through the hard ones? and I was able to navigate that. And again, that goes back to support. I'm super lucky with the support I have. Um, I I can't say it enough. I've got a team of people around me that if I ever have a moment, I know I can go to, and they're going to help me out.
Mhm.
So then I kind of ramped things up again with working out in September, last September, because it was recovery month. And so
Mhm.
I started a challenge with a group of friends that we were going to do a 5K a day. I started a little Facebook group with people, and um, somewhere in the middle of doing the 5K a day, I was like, let's do a different monthly challenge every month. So we kept adding different challenges. And then somewhere in that September to now, I found, um, I say all the time to all these people in the group, I try to push them as hard as I can, which maybe sometimes it's too much, but um, I, I say all the time, no excuses. Like, I'm so tired of excuses. I gave myself excuses for 20 plus years. So if I wake up and I don't want to work out, I'm like, that's not an excuse because you just don't want to. It's not an excuse because you're too tired. You put your shoes on and you just go do it. Like, living life to the fullest. I feel limitless in the things I can
Mhm.
do. I feel like if I make a goal, I make sure I obtain the goal. I don't Rarely would I miss a goal. It's very important to me. If I say it, I'm going to do it. And this group that I created, we're small but mighty. We all kind of motivate each other, and not all of them are even in recovery. Some of them just are wanting
Yeah.
to get exercising and get healthier, and it's been cool. I love that group. I'm just now getting back into it. I had my gallbladder removed a little bit ago, so I had to take a little bit of a break. But even then, I was like, I went to my follow up appointment. I'm like, okay, when can I start working out again? Like, I'm
Mm.
ready to go. I just, um, like I said, adding all of that together just made my stars align. I just feel like I started to skyrocket and feel so much more confident in the decisions I was making.
Think that, and I've had people like my support system really say like, um doing esteemable acts build your self-esteem. I love how like, you were committing to your goals, because I think as alcoholics, like, people in recovery, I think that a lot of the times, like when we're not, because we were failing over and over daily, right? Like we'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not going to take that drink. And then you take the drink, right? I think that's so important where you're really pushing yourself to like follow through on your goals. Like that's
Mhm.
really amazing. And that's incredible that you've done all this inner work to be able to do that. Trying to work out more, I had to, but I really struggle with the physical, getting motivated and stuff like that.
Don't tell me that. I'll be calling you daily. I'll make you get out there.
Oh, yes. So, what's your Facebook group?
It's called, oh God, it's recovery challenge, or whatever.
Recovery challenge.
Yeah, I can invite you
I'll
to it.
put the link. I'm gonna put the link at the bottom of this so then
Okay.
other people can join, and I'll
Yeah.
try to join. I'm a little scared, but I'll
Yeah.
definitely try to join. And I wrote down like a couple of things like about what you were saying, and I love that connection is really really important in
Mhm.
recovery. Being accountable. It sounds like you've really tried to hold yourself to a standard of that, breaking the cycle, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like that's pretty incredible. You've been breaking this cycle, like you said you were born into addiction basically, and you now are breaking the cycle, and you stayed sober through losing your stepdaughter. I mean, that means that it's pretty it's pretty incredible that you stayed sober, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think of breaking the cycle, that like is it brings a smile to my face, right? Like
Mhm.
I can already see. Well, I was already giving to my kids more than what I had because it wasn't a high bar I had to go past, right? But
Gotcha.
To know that now that they can look at me and they don't see the guy that was drinking all the time. And I've had open dialogue with my kids too. Just like I'm transparent with everybody, with my kids, I found it to be really important too. And then I've talked to them about the missteps I've had when I was drinking with them, driving them in the car drunk with me, when I shouldn't have been driving. I've had those hard conversations with them, and thankfully nothing ever happened. And a million things could have happened when I had them in the car, and they didn't. And I'm lucky for that, and I don't take it for granted. Um, but I also tell them, look at all the work I'm doing now. You don't have any excuses. I don't want to hear it from you. If you have
Mm.
these missteps, right, I'm going to be on you. But if they have missteps, then I'll be there to help them the best I can through it. I just want to keep pushing myself in all areas. It doesn't matter where it is: relationship, work, fatherhood. I just want to be the best version of myself I can be. And I feel like I've given myself a good shot to rewrite the rest of my time here. And I strive to do the best I can at it. And I don't want to fall short.
I just I've done a couple of these interview and I haven't really gotten emotional. You were sharing and stuff. I feel you have a really great way of conveying the emotions that you felt during your drinking and then also like your emotions during like sobriety that I can think most people can identify with, breaking the cycle, going through hard things in recovery and staying sober. It's just, I mean, your story is it's absolutely incredible, and just want to thank you for. Is there anything else that you want to share, like your first 90 days, maybe? What do you think is most important, like a tip for your first
Yeah.
90 days of recovery?
Whew, that first 90's hard. The first 90's tough, I'm not gonna lie. And if you're going through it or just starting it or halfway through that first 90, you know what I'm talking about. Um, I think a lot of times people ask, and I just got this question yesterday, actually, um, like I want to go out. Like I don't know if I can go out. And when I do go out, it's overwhelming. Like pump the brakes. Nothing says that you have to go out and hang with your friends at a bar while you're trying to find your foundation in recovery. It's okay to sit at home. It's okay to just chill and take it easy. Now, my birthday's coming up and my girlfriend's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Sit at home. I'm cool. I don't need to go out and do anything." But I think that it's easy to allow that temptation in to be like, "Well, I want to go hang with my friends and I want to go this and that." And all you have to realize your friends are going to change. You can't go into recovery and think you're going to still hang out with your drinking buddies and it's going to be any different. You have to really find yourself. And I think it's important to lean on the ones closest to you for that support. And the other thing is I think it's important where if you if you're having a hard day, you have to talk about it. You can't let that sit. If you let it sit, it's just going to build, and it's got to come out somewhere. And I tried to I found when I was in rehab, the first time I had that moment, when they told us they were moving us out to a different facility, um, somebody next to me cracked open a root beer, and when I
Mm.
heard when I heard the crack noise, I immediately looked and said out loud, I was like, "I want a beer right now." And my counselor looked at me and he was like, "I want you to do that every time you have that feeling. I want you to say it out loud." He's like, "You got to get that out." And so from that point on, I've always done that. When I came back, I was back at work within my first 90 days, and I had um, everybody at work knew where I was and knew what I was going through, but I had a handful of people that I was really close with. And when I would get a craving at work, I would grab them. I'm like, "I just got to say this out loud. I want to buy a six pack." And then it would be like out, and I wouldn't have to think about it anymore. I never held on to those moments. Um, so yeah, I think you just need to push yourself to communicate. It's so easy to sit and not talk about things. But the more that I've talked and been transparent and open, the easier it gets. And sometimes I feel like I meet somebody, I shake their hand, and I'm like, "I'm Dave, I'm in recovery." Like it just flows out of me. I feel like I say all the time in my posts that I am recovery, and I feel like I wear it. I'm wearing it on my shirt. I feel
Yeah.
like I wear it, and I want people to see it on me and feel like they can talk to me if they need to talk, or if they're curious about recovery, like let's talk about it. But that first 90 days, feel it's okay to sit at home, find yourself. It's okay to
Mhm.
not have to do anything. Um, and just communicate as much as you can. If you have thoughts and you don't have somebody to communicate with, journal it, write it down. You got to get them out. Don't hold on to them.
David, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us. And I would like to say, watch this on YouTube. J Sober Shorts, David Rushing. I would say that this interview, he talks about breaking the cycle. He talks about, alcohol bringing you to a gateway drug and basically starting the process of recovery and how to handle that and handling hard things sober and clean. Would just really like to say, thank you so much for coming on and really giving like such an emotional, heartfelt experience and sharing your experience, strength, and hope.